MLB Network Radio. Ladies and gentlemen, now singing the Mike Ferrin Open, it's Mike Stibbs.
Just make sure it sounds sexy, Stibbs.
Lord Almighty, how can you stand Arizona? Your fair skin must be burning down into your absent soul. Mike, 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 we can barely hear you. It sounds to me like you called us from inside a hole. But your phone calls lift me higher, like the ERA of Mark Pryor. Your hair looks like it's on fire. You're Mike Ferrin. You're just a hunk of burning love. You're just a hunk of burning.
Now, is this replacing the regular One Beer Friday Open today, Stibbs?
To me it is. We have a special guest.
We do have a special guest in One Beer Friday.
I got to tell you, I was disappointed. I thought Stibbs sang it live every week, and now I can see that it's on tape. Here, I thought you had a band and everything in here every day. And
well,
so
that is actually him playing guitar. I mean, he actually did play guitar.
Yeah. What a man of many talents.
One of the few that is completely constructed from the ground up, and I didn't just grab a instrumental off YouTube.
Or grew into the production music where it's like you have the CDs of production music and it's like, oh, this is Dazed and Confessed. Like off of Zeppelin, right?
It's a lot of the titles on those production CDs were just terrible. I remember
so funny.
I would try to find something. I would try to find something to, like have music for like our local sports broadcasts, and there'd be something called Monday Night, Gridiron. And so you're thinking it's going to be like a Monday Night Football ripoff, and you put it in, you hit play, and it's just the worst bed you could ever think of. And it's like, this sounds nothing like a football open.
I need to purchase a production music library because I just miss being in the studio with a production music library. Like, I feel like I should have one for everything that I do, that there should always be some lousy bed of music underneath me that somebody's made 38 cents on. Like, God bless the people that make production music. Like, I shouldn't call it lousy. I mean, it's just lousy, but like when you're doing commercials, like, you gotta have the bed underneath you. So
that's right, because you never know if you play something that's copywritten, someone's going to get upset and say, "I don't want you endorsing this." Yeah, well, there he is, ladies and gentlemen.
The part about commercial production for me is trying to find a bed that sounds suitable for whatever it is I just read, and it's almost impossible because, like you said, many of the songs don't go with anything at all.
Well, you can hear his wonderful voice, Mike Ferrin, Sirius XM MLB Radio, joining us on the video stream at Stibbs TV, and also, of course, right here on 1620 The Zone. Was going to join us last week, but unfortunately, his beloved dog passed away, and it was tough. But how are you getting by? You okay?
We're okay. Yeah, I mean, the last weekend was really tough. I was telling you guys before we got on here that Pops, who was our chocolate lab, we had him for 10 years. We rescued him shortly before we got married, so he's been with us for our entire married life. And we don't have kids, so we spoil our dogs like they're kids. So so it was tough. It was a tough couple of days, but we're coming through it. We have our little guy George, who's still pretty cute and having he seems to have soaked up the extra attention that he's getting, and I don't think he's even noticed that Pops is gone, so that's a little disheartening, because I guess it could happen to us too, and he'd be like, don't care. Goes all Jay Cutler on us.
We are, of course, this is One Beer Friday, our Friday tradition. Today I'm gonna pull out the Alaskan Husky IPA, which I bought a few weeks ago. Which I love this Alaskan brewery. They're great.
I'm going with the Web of Lies Hazy Double from our friends at Cross Drain here in town, drinking local today.
Oh, that's very appropriate for you in your transition into something else. Web of Lies.
Oh, would you stop it? I thought you were going to say web like a web gem, because we have Ferrin on baseball. Mike, baseball. What are
Josh?
I hate you. Dibs, not you, Mike.
Are you drinking along with us, or just water?
I would love to, but last week I would have had things not gone haywire, but I have to do another thing in a couple of hours, and once I crack open one,
it's like
there's going to be many.
Yes. but it is nice to be sitting around with other people who are drinking, even virtually.
Hey, we do this every Friday. We've been doing it for over 2 years now, right?
Yeah, a couple years.
Been a 2.5
thing.
And this is the first time I've been invited.
But now this video concept we just started doing because of the pandemic.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're like the fourth person we've invited.
Yeah, we would
here.
just drink alone in the studio by ourselves.
Yeah.
We don't have friends, Mike.
We're a living George Thorogood song. We drink alone with nobody else.
I can totally see Stibbs doing that.
Are you drinking, Stibbs?
I got some fine H2O.
What
here.
happened to the Chiefs? What happened to the Chiefs Budweiser?
I took it home and I poured every single bottle out into one giant jug
No, you didn't.
so that I don't have to see any of those garbage cans anymore.
So
You
it's in a
did
growler?
not.
No, I didn't. They're at home though.
We had a listener last week, Mike, drop off a care package for Stibbs, and it was a case or a 12-pack of Kansas City Chiefs Budweiser Super Bowl bottles. Of course, Stibbs is a big Broncos fan, and he's not happy.
Oh, yeah, that sounds great. Did you see the I follow other sports other than baseball. I'm your big bad football daddy here. Somebody put out this thing where the most popular teams by states based on hashtags today. Did you see that one?
Yes.
Where Illinois' most popular team was the Chiefs. And at first I was like, you've got to be, no, that might make sense. Based on the state of the Bears, that might actually make sense.
Well, the screwy thing about this map is that
Everything,
the
first of all.
Buffalo Bills are the most popular team in the Rocky Mountains. Still,
Bills Nation, baby.
Many people know Colorado for being Bills Mafia Part 2.
Josh Allen's time at Wyoming was so spectacular and so memorable that it's crossed state lines.
you know what I really think it is. In all seriousness, people retweeting the videos of the Bills Mafia crashing through flaming tables out in the parking lot.
No, what it really is these lists are fake, and these stupid maps come out, and then we talk about them, and it's like, wow, that map is wrong. They're not true.
They win again.
And that's why we need to do one. We need to do one like Mike Ferrin's favorite part of every state. Just list 50 random things.
I'll tell you what, I got agitated when I saw that Arizona's favorite team was the Packers because you just can't be close to those people. We had a neighbor before that had a Packer flag, and they also had a lot of other unmentionable flags on their front lawn. We didn't care for them very much.
Stars and bars.
Stars.
There was a lot of, in our old neighborhood, we had a lot of InfoWars bumper stickers on cars.
Oh no.
Mhm.
Big
Oh,
fans of-
Stibbs.
yep, here we go.
Stibbs has got the drops.
I got to search and keep talking.
Oh, he's got to search for him. You don't even have him in the system. Oh,
No, they're in the system. There's so
we-
many of them. They're not in
We
the
have
same.
too many Alex Jones drops, Ferrin.
we do. We have way too many.
Your ass.
I don't even like to give the guy publicity because what a whack job.
the human spirit.
He's a crazy person.
When I lived in Arizona for about a year, Mike, there were a lot of Packer fans around me.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're all Midwesterners here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a ton of Chicagoans. And I mean, hell, we even have Chicago's original football team here. I mean, the Cardinals were the first one in Chicago.
That's
So,
right.
like, we have, I mean, it's loaded. Like, we have all sorts of, like all the Chicago eateries are here now, all the pizza places, Portillo's. Like, we've got all that. It's all Midwest people. That's why everybody in Arizona is so nice.
Pitch is there now, too.
Pitches?
Yeah.
The
It's an Omaha pizzeria. It's really good.
Oh, I've been to that place. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that was an Omaha spot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, Mike, of course, we bring you on not only just because we're having fun on a Friday, but we're hoping, fingers crossed, that we're going to have some Major League Baseball at some point. Since the last time we talked to you, of course, is this new 3-division plan, playing in all the home stadiums. We have not heard, at least unless you've heard something, an official plan's been forwarded, as some reports have said, but probably early next week. Is that what your understanding is, that sometime early next week the union's going to have something in front of them?
Well, I think that they're at least planning to start talking to the union next week, and I don't know what the former proposal has to look like. I mean, the understanding was sometime, either by the end of this week or by the middle of next week that there would be something at least given to the union. But there's a lot that has to be discussed, and I think the fact that they're early next week going to start the conversations, I think, is probably the biggest part of this. They're going to talk, undoubtedly about schedule, about where they would play, about, I think, safety of players, testing, those kind of things. All of that is going to be a huge part of the discussion. And then the owners owners are going to ask the players to take a little bit more of a financial haircut on the season, and we'll see where it goes from there. But yeah, I think that it's safe to say that the conversations are going to begin in earnest very soon, and they kind of have to, because like, I think everybody says, hey, July 1st is, and nobody has said that publicly, but like, that's kind of the target date. But they also acknowledge it's pretty wishful thinking, right? This is if everything goes well, if things are trending right, we can do it. But you got to plan for July 1st if you're going to even have an August 1st start, because what happens if you miss that month to be able to play in? So they can always push back a little bit further if they need to, but that seems to be the safest bet right now, is that's what they're going to target, and we'll see where it goes from there.
You know, Mike, whenever we talk about anything right now reopening, it's like phase 1 is this, and then phase 2 is this, and phase 3 is this. So if you look at that from the baseball standpoint, where phase 4 is the season beginning and phase 3 is, an abbreviated like exhibition season or whatever, like what do the phases look like, and how much time do you think needs to be in between each of them of, hey, here's our announcement, we're hoping to practice in X amount of weeks, and then after that we'll have games, and then what does that look like, the time frame of all that?
Yeah, I mean, so like if you want to work backwards from like, let's assume a July 1st start date, just for the sake of the conversation, you probably need about 3 weeks worth of a spring training year. So you take back to middle of June, like the somewhere between the 10th and the 15th of June, somewhere around then is when you would start. You'd probably need a week for players to be able to show up. Although it's likely that this spring training would happen in their home cities, that's much more likely than them going back to Arizona and Florida. Sure. I think that makes sense too. And so you spend, a week getting everybody together. So that gets you to the beginning of June, right? So around June 1st, you probably need to have a decision. So your timeline's actually pretty short.
Yeah.
Because what we're talking about is pretty significant, especially if owners are going to ask the players to take less money than what they've already agreed to take, which is a prorated some of their contracts based on the number of games that they're going to play. And the owners are definitely going to ask. Now, I don't know if they're going to get there, but just like a lot of rich people in the US, owners are rich on paper. They don't always have a lot of cash on hand. And that's one of the issues that they're running into. And this is going to change the landscape of what baseball is like for the next several years, not just in terms of player procurement and free agency and all of that, but in terms of the way baseball operations and player development is employed, in fact, the way marketing staff is employed. There's be a whole lot of changes that come out of this, just like in any other industry that's battling right now that doesn't have any revenue. I mean, baseball's revenue right now is zero. Last year was $10.7 billion.
Incredible. Mike Ferrin joining us from Sirius XM MLB Radio. The thing that I still kind of stumble with a bit, because when you hear the NBA talk or the NHL talk, and even some of the early baseball plans was, okay, we're going to try to limit the number of places we're actually playing. But this plan is talking about all 30 teams playing in their home stadiums. That's, several different states who all have varying degrees of openness right now. I mean, now we don't have a major league team here in Nebraska, but I would assume Nebraska would be in a lot better shape than California would be, or maybe even Illinois. I guess to me, that's I still can't get past that roadblock as far as do they actually think they're going to be able to play in Yankee Stadium, in Citi Field, in Wrigley Field? Or are they going to have to revise this plan to some degree and maybe have pods and just play some of these games in some of the division cities that they're talking about?
So the short answer to that is yes to all of it. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing, is that they're going to have to stay flexible. I do think that California seems like it has, they have probably done maybe the second best job behind New York of flattening the curve and actually getting it to decrease. And so maybe while it seems like those were the epicenters, and obviously you're talking about huge population bases in New York and Los Angeles, they may actually be in a little bit better position come July 1st than some other municipalities could be. So all of that is still up in the air. And again, we're talking about playing games without fans. I mean, that's the other part of it, is that this isn't going to be, at least to start the year. I know they're hopeful that they'll get fans in the stands at some point. I'll believe it when I see it. But you're limiting to a small group of people, basically. And right now, the league is asking teams, who do you need to have at a game? Who needs to be there? And those are the things that they're going through to try and limit the number of people. But they also need to be able to have backup plans. So, like, let's say let's say Western Pennsylvania hasn't been hit all that hard, and you go to Pittsburgh, and all of a sudden there's a hot spot that breaks out in Pittsburgh, and it's not safe to have people there. They need to be able to have a backup location for that entire team to be able to move to go to. And so I think that that's part of what they're working on. The other benefit, the more that you spread it out, the easier it potentially makes it on the healthcare systems in all of those cities if something catastrophic were to happen. Because if you were to take 4,000 people or whatever and put them in Phoenix, and all of a sudden something happened inside that bubble, like you would inundate the healthcare system. That was one of the drawbacks to the one city plan. Now, if you've got 26 different places to go, it spreads out a little bit. Now, granted, you're dealing with stuff that's outside that bubble too. So, it might be a dangerous place anyway, but at least there's a little bit more balance to it in that regard. And we'll just see how Major League Baseball puts it together. But there's still a lot of hurdles to jump over to get to this point. So,
yeah. So another hurdle, Mike, and this I think is one of the more fun ones. It's like, how many games? What does the playoff structure look like? Universal DH, all of those things that in a normal season, of course, you wouldn't have. John and I have been talking about this for a month, and I don't know. I'm kind of excited for it. I keep saying embrace the weird. What do you think those things ultimately look like? Because if the sample size of a regular season is 100 games, does that mean you have to expand the playoff? You have to have more teams in there. What I guess if you're putting this together, what would you do with some of those logistical things, whether it's universal DH playoff structure, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'm the right person to put in that role, because I'm a mad scientist and I would do all sorts of horrible things. Yep. So let's take a look at what's probably more likely. And the first thing I would say is follow the money. One of the reasons why they're going to play these games is it's going to bring in television revenue. Now, granted, almost all of it would have to go to the players at this point, the way things are structured, but that's why they're doing it. Players get paid for the regular season. The money in the postseason goes to MLB and ownership. Now, the players, obviously, there's a playoff pool that they vote on and they split, and that's all fine and good, and that's a lot of money that ends up going to the players in that too. But that to me is the biggest thing, is that there's going to end up there has to be some kind of expanded playoffs, because it's going to be a way for them to be able to sell more games on television. So that's part of it. The other stuff, I think, if you're looking at a regional format, which is likely what you're doing, where, let's say the National League Central is playing itself mostly, but the other teams that they would play are in the American League Central, you're playing a larger percentage of games that are interleague, so to speak. So you probably are going to go to the universal DH. They're going to be a lot of double headers, because they're going to try and cram as many games as possible into a shorter season. So you're probably looking at 7-inning double headers like you would have in college or in the minor leagues. That's a distinct possibility, I think. So those are a couple of things. I think the international tiebreaker rule in extra innings after the 12th inning, when you start with runners at first and second, that's a possibility as well. That really doesn't end up affecting that many games, but I think that's something that they would try. And then I think some of the other things that they're going to do are probably from a broadcast standpoint. I mean, I think in the last 6 to 8 months, you've really seen players take a better you've seen things turn in terms of players being willing to show personality. So like the MLB The Show tournament that they did was really great for that. The Mets guys are doing this really, really funny, like weekly late night cookie thing that Steve Gelb's hosts that shows off their personalities. Like, you're starting to see guys show up. And I think a lot of it happened in the post Astros thing, where you heard players were willing to find their voice and speak publicly. And I think MLB would be smart to tap into that, so that it gives you something to care about with the players. And so I think that there's going to be probably more microphone access to players, more things. And quite frankly, like, there's probably not going to be a whole lot of on-site media coverage for it. So it's a good way to be able to get their personalities out.
Do you think there will be more national TV games? Like, that was one of the things that I've been thinking about, is basically every night of the week, will FS1, ESPN, whatever, have a game on, you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something I've been thinking about too. And, obviously MLB Network carries a lot of pass-through games, and I would think that they would do the same on television. But yeah, I would not be surprised if there tries to be some level of renegotiation of a deal. I mean, generally, like, ESPN's contracted to do X amount of games over the course of a season. Well, we're almost a third of the way through, what would be the regular year to this point, and they haven't played any of them. So they probably need to have so many that they televise in order to get to that number, but everybody's dying for live sports programming, right? So I would not be surprised if you saw that happen. And that would be a boon potentially to everybody involved, because there would be more money coming in. And that's, again, what all of this is about, is both the owners and the players want to be able to make money. I mean, it's capitalism 101, right? Everybody get yours. So
what I think is going to be a challenge among many challenges, as we talk with Mike Ferrin of Sirius XM MLB Radio. We spoke with Marty Cordero, who's the president of the Omaha Storm Chasers this week, and you could just hear the frustration in his voice as they're trying to work through whatever it is they can do. That is a sport that must have a live audience. That's where the money comes from. Obviously, they don't have the big media deals, but you will have, if you have Major League Baseball, and if we have situations where some players may have to be quarantined because they come down with a virus, but the games are going to continue. How is the feeder system going to work in all this? Are rosters going to have to be expanded? If they are expanded, then obviously that's more money coming out of the owners' pockets and maybe less money for the existing players. You talked about the contracts earlier, but how do you keep fresh bodies if there's not a minor league feeder system there to prepare and be there for it?
Yeah, that's been a topic of discussion, I think, especially within the last week. And I would expect that teams have somewhere in a range that the roster for the season will be somewhere between like 50 and 60 players. And that will be part of the traveling party, so to speak. Now, maybe it's like college football where not everybody travels on the weekend or whatever. Not everybody goes behind at home, but there are going to be a number of players around, and you're going to have a lot of like simulated games and a lot of, trying to keep guys fresh. You're probably going to see a number of those kind of fringe major league guys kept around for depth, and then probably some top prospects because you feel like it's good for their development. So I think more than anything, it's going to be a balance of that, but you might see, when what's generally a 26-man roster, you might see 2 to 2.5 times that in terms of the number of players that are actually rostered for the season. And then it goes back, like you said, John, to the money component, but minimum salary players are probably not as big a concern for the owners as the guys that are making significant chunks of change.
Mike, one of the questions that I asked Marty the other day was about like a fear of coming back first, and that ended up being a mistake because something happens, an outbreak. I mean, the biodome issue that you brought up earlier is certainly like a worst case scenario. In the conversations that you have had with folks inside of the majors, is that a concern for them? Do you think of coming back first and that ended up being a mistake that we all look back and say, I can't believe they did that?
Well, I mean, I think that there's always that worry, right? I mean, like I think that probably, I would assume that there are a number of governors that have gone through that too, right? And trying to open up the state is like, we think this is the right thing now, but like, what if we're wrong? What if the gains that we've made in trying to fight this are all eliminated? I can't imagine that anybody with a heart wouldn't feel that going in. So yeah, I do think that that's part of it. And I think that that's why they're trying to work with, the CDC and the NIH and Health and Human Services on trying to figure out, when the landscape is right. I mean, my understanding is that the main epidemiologist that they're working with is a guy by the name of Dr. Ali Khan, who's the dean of University of Nebraska Medical Center in Omaha. And they've been working with him on this. So it's not like they're not consulting with people, with experts on how to do this. But I do think you run that risk because I'm not an epidemiologist, but I'll play one in this conversation. I mean, this virus seems to be somewhat unpredictable. And so we're not going to really know. I think one thing that we need to be comfortable with is the idea of potentially starting and stopping and starting again. And that's something that, like, if you look at the KBO model, they have built in, if a player tests positive, they'll shut the league down for 3 weeks and then resume play. Everybody plays a balanced number of games. I think it's 18 games would be canceled for each team, and then they would start again. I think we have to be comfortable with the idea that that's something that could happen in an effort to try and keep people safe. But again, we have to make sure that there has to be enough testing for the public, for them to be testing for the players. They have to contact trace. They have to do all the things that we've heard about ad nauseum have to happen inside this baseball bubble to try and keep it as safe as possible.
Do we also, though, have to feel comfortable with, because you just mentioned testing a moment ago, Mike. I mean, where we sit right now on May the 8th, obviously the testing isn't where it needs to be. And all of these are going under the assumption that we have, some more widespread testing. Do we also have to be comfortable with the fact that maybe major league players in order for us to get our sports back, get bumped up the line just a little bit. And even if we don't have as much testing as we want, we'll make this sacrifice so that we can at least get something back. Because I don't know if in a month or month and a half, if we're going to be at the testing levels necessary to do all of these grand plans.
Yeah, I think what you have to continue to see is improvement in it, right? And I think it's a fair question to ask. And are we willing to stand in line behind that? Or are there things that a sports league can do to help? Jeff Passan's piece last week looking at this mentioned that Bundesliga, which is the German soccer league, which is getting ready to start back up on the 16th, is going to donate 5 tests for every player that's tested to the community. Now, if Major League Baseball is able to secure some sort of contract that will allow that to happen, where they can help to enhance the amount of testing that's in a community while also keeping their players safe, so that it's not taking away from the resources that are available to healthcare professionals, or at least create their own testing protocol where they have all of that internally, where it's not taking away from the public health sector. I think that makes it a lot easier, because it is a significant PR hit, I think, if you do go down that road.
Yep.
And I'm not sure that you want to be playing a PR game in the midst of a pandemic.
Mike, I wanted to ask you one non-pandemic question. We've talked about it a couple of times, but Joe Posnanski did he ranked the 100 best baseball players of all time. I don't know if you had a chance to read any of them or.
No, because Joe's writing is so long, I just can't do it.
It is very long. What did you think of his? So his top 5 was Willie Mays, Babe Ruth, Barry Bonds, Hank Aaron, and Oscar Charleston. What do you think of that as a top 5?
I think it's, what was it again in order? Babe Ruth is number 1?
No, Mays was number 1.
Mays was number 1. Mays, you can make the argument, is the greatest, all-around player of all time.
Yeah.
I think it's really hard to take Ruth off the list because nobody changed the game more than Ruth did. All of a sudden it was, and by the way, it only took us 100 years after Ruth to figure out, oh yeah, maybe home runs are a good thing. So there's that. Aaron obviously was a premier hitter. Bonds is the greatest hitter of the last 50 years. And it's interesting that he would go with Oscar Charleston over Josh Gibson, who certainly has more renown, but Charleston is the guy who is probably the most complete player in Negro Leagues history. And Joe was very close with Buck O'Neil, who really was hugely influential in the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City, and would have heard stories about those guys to be able to make the decision. I don't really have an issue with it, but to be honest, I haven't really thought that much about it. I've always felt like Joe DiMaggio walked around for a good portion of his life having to be introduced as the greatest living ball player, and Willie Mays was right freaking there. Hello, it's really hard to argue that Willie Mays isn't on the short list for greatest players of all time when you look at what he did, the era he did it in, and how complete a player he was offensively and defensively.
Well, in DiMaggio, he won all the championships. Willie Mays had 2 World Series rings, right?
One.
Well,
he went to 2 World Series, I think, or went to 3 World Series. He played in 54, 62, and 73. He was at the Mets in the 73 World Series.
Was he on the 51 team?
Yes, he would have been. So he went to 4 World Series, but he only won 1.
But it's kind of like the argument of Tom Brady being the best because he's got 6 Super Bowls, or you've got, someone else who, was just a better athlete. I look at the two side by side, and it's like, of course it's Willie Mays. Willie Mays over Joe DiMaggio every day ends in Y.
There are a fair amount of how should I put this? Because I don't want to say it's excuses, because it's not really, but there is an extra level of analysis that came to the career of DiMaggio, because DiMaggio was impacted by the ballpark that he played in. Yankee Stadium to left center field was ridiculous. In terms of the monuments were on the freaking field for years, right? It was a terrible place for right-handed power hitters. And DiMaggio probably lost well over 100 career home runs in that ballpark. So I think that there is something that can be said for that. And he was a tremendous all-round player. And, he's one of the greats of all time. He's an inner circle Hall of Famer. But it's really hard to argue with Mays, especially when you consider that Mays got a little bit later start in his career than even DiMaggio did. DiMaggio played in the Pacific Coast League to start, but Mays Mays started in the Negro Leagues, and for him to put together the year that he did, or the career that he did, is really remarkable. He just celebrated a birthday, and by the way, there's a new biography on Mays that's out that's supposed to be great. John Shea,
is it?
Who's been the long-time national baseball writer for the San Francisco Chronicle, just did a biography on Willie Mays that I think just got released within the last couple of weeks.
The thing I didn't realize about Mays, by the way, he had DiMaggio at 56. That I didn't realize about him was that in the year where they, Bobby Thompson shot heard around the world, he made a play. I think it was in August that Joe Posnanski wrote about. That without that, they don't begin this comeback of the rest of the season. It was essentially kind of like the famed.
Was it the play where he bought the dude in the scoreboard, the spyglass, so they could steal the signs?
Yeah,
I was trying to figure out how to set that one up, but yeah, that probably helped with the comeback too. Then,
yeah, no. And on that note, if we get this baseball plan together, we're going to get Dodgers Astros in the same division, but there won't be any fans.
No fans. I know.
Did they pump in that noise? Like, seriously, should there be like a murmuring pumped in just of like a low noise?
I don't know about in the ballpark, but I don't know if you've watched I know you're such a baseball fan, Josh, that I can't imagine that you haven't been watching on the KBO broadcasts. But they have been putting in some low ambient crowd noise in the background, and it's actually been nice for part of the broadcast. I mean, it gives them, it's like that white noise that you're anticipating hearing. So it's not unsettling. It's noticeable, but not distracting. And from what I understand, Major League Baseball wants to do something similar with that, but they might try and engage fans somehow. I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but they're trying to be creative with some of these ideas, because there's not going to be an active way to be engaged as a fan, right? Like, you go to the ballpark, you're engaged in what's happening. When you're at home, like it's a much more passive experience. So how do you continue to keep people involved? Because after the first couple of weeks of like, yeah, everybody's excited, baseball's back, like, you've got to be able to keep that edge going forward.
Well, having done a lot of games in the old Missouri Valley Conference where there was maybe 4 people in the stands, I'm kind of used to the whole white noise of
John
baseball
call Major League Baseball game.
I thought it was going to be because you worked with Josh that you were used to the white noise in the background. Just
it took a half hour for me to get roasted. That's great.
That's true. I lost
a half hour. What are you doing?
I lost my bet.
By the way,
did you have the under?
Yeah.
Oh, we thought it was going to be 4.5 seconds.
Yeah.
Multiple people, Mike, by the way, have brought up your the quality of this call. Steve says, "Wow, now I know it's the end of days. I can actually hear Ferrin. That's got to be at least 5 of the 7 signs of the apocalypse."
I'm not on a phone. I'm actually talking into a microphone into my computer.
Guys, I don't know if you noticed it, but there was a moment early in the interview
where
Mike's video was behind his voice.
Yep.
And I was about ready to mention something, going, "Oh my God, it's going to fail us again!" But it caught up, and now he's all lip synced, so he doesn't look like Milli Vanilli.
Did you accidentally kick him out of the broadcast for a second?
Yeah,
I did. When I was trying to go to the full screen, I hit the remove from stream. So
I got nervous because I just thought it was like maybe an internet hiccup, and then right after he came back, it went full screen, and I thought, "Oh, John hit the wrong button."
That's called a fat fingers mistake. No.
Yeah, that's just me. Well, Mike, it's great to catch up with you, and hopefully at some point we will actually talk about actual live baseball. And thanks for joining us here on our virtual One Beer Friday, even though you didn't imbibe with us.
I am disappointed that I did not get a chance to imbibe, but it is really great to see you guys. Please stay safe, and hopefully we will be talking baseball very soon.
Amen. If there is a favorite beer you have, what would it be?
So I'm a big fan of New Glarus in Wisconsin. Their Spotted Cow right? That's what we used to. So I grew up, north of Chicago, but close enough to the Wisconsin border that we would smuggle it across. So, I'm a big Spotted Cow is my go-to. And every once in a while, somebody will ship me some.
Yeah, what is it about Chicago where all their favorite beers come from Wisconsin?
Ooh.
Well, it's because that's the only good thing to come out of Wisconsin, John. It's not true anymore. Chicago has actually some great, like a lot of great craft breweries. There's even a decent brewery in Indiana, which just defies logic.
I love the state rivalries. All right, my friend, take care and be safe yourself, okay?
You guys too. See you
Thank
later.
All right, there he is, Mike Ferrin, ladies. By the way, did you notice? Look at that. Before he goes, look at this. He's got a jersey.
The jersey,
He's got a personalized
the jersey's
jersey.
pretty cool back there.
I had to I've had to do a lot more video calls, so I had to class it up. You missed the other poster in the background, though. That's really cool. It says in 1950, electricity discovered the blues.
Oh, that's awesome.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that sounds like something that Stibbs might have hanging up in the.
That's a good one. It's an old Illinois tourism board poster for Bronzeville.
Awesome. All right, Mike. Take care.
Mike,
Thank
There
you.
he
Mike.
goes, Mike Ferrin of Sirius XM MLB Radio. It's always good to see our friend.
if anybody wants to send us spotted cow so we could try it, 5011 Capitol Avenue, 68132.
I've had it. It's good. It's okay.
I've never had it. I would love to have it.
Yeah. I've had it.
5011 Capitol Avenue, 68132. I'll Venmo you. I'll pay.
You know, well, remind me, fingers crossed, if we're traveling next year, remind me, and I'll get some when we go to Marquette, when we go to Milwaukee.
Oh,
and I'll bring
perfect.
some back.
Awesome.
Deal.
By the way, Matt says you guys look so nice in all the station hats trying to get Employee of the Month. Well, Matt, wouldn't you know it?
Yeah.
We all won Employee of the Month.
Already did it.
Not to brag.
Already did
We
it.
won it right as the show was starting. The slide was popping up on Zoom.
We may be
And then we
sharing
all-
it with 34 other people, but it's ours.
It's a
Yep.
spring championship.
Yep. I look forward to my 1 square inch corner piece of that wood plaque here at some point when we're back in studio.
My 15-cent Amazon gift card.
Oh, it's gonna be great.
We got to get to predictions. We got what you say. So let's take a break. We'll be right back at 1620 The Zone.